Jane Smith, the fabulous Maya Erskine. Us tinies have to watch out for each other.
That must have been intense. I'm sorry. You guys
I'm
started.
so sorry.
You guys started
What
at
a
the
fun
very
night
end.
out.
I know. It must have been intense.
I mean, yeah, what was that episode like? Because it is kind of that intense episode, that very action-heavy episode, but probably the one that, for folks who just hear the words Mr. and Mrs. Smith, has those vibes of the 2005, some of the set pieces also of the 2005 movie. How did that kind of play into just the storyline you guys were hoping to tell with this movie and where we get to in the arc with this couple?
Well, I mean, like Fran, who's here, Francesca Sloan, who created the show. Don't hide your face. This is your fault. Created the show with us. We always talked about like, oh yeah, we should do it, but it should take a minute to get there because the show's about relationships. So we always wanted to like, we were like, oh, we do want them to fight. We do, and it had to be like the physical manifestation of like what we were actually talking about, which was like the destroying of like the house and like all of that kind of stuff. So like we were just like, oh, it just has to be earned. I feel like when you watch the movie now, the movie's still great, but it's like very 90s, and they're kind of shying away from the fact that like this is a domestic dispute. Like they're like playing funk music underneath, and like you're like, oh, this is a good time, right? We're supposed to laugh. And so I was like, if we didn't play it that way, if it was real, if it felt real, how do you make it like earned? And like that was like kind of the idea was to try and make everything feel like kind of earned, and that takes time. So we kind of knew from the beginning we wanted it to end that way, But.
Maya, what was it like for you to kind of finally open up as Jane? We're going to kind of get to the way y'all get there in a moment. But yeah, I mean, this is Jane going full out in all respects. Physically, emotionally, really letting it all out there in this episode.
I mean, yeah, it was cathartic because it was for so many months, I had to contain so many things that I knew as Maya, like that were going to be revealed. I mean, they had known about the last episode from the beginning, so all of the secrets that she reveals, and there was just so much containment, and it felt so freeing to have that truth serum sequence and also beat the shit out of Donald. It was very fun.
We were pretty mad at Beef. Because they kind of did something similar.
They did the,
yeah.
I didn't, yeah.
I don't know. But I was like, we're kind of doing it differently, but that was about it.
Is it different?
Is it different enough? It was different enough for us. Yeah, that's true. It came out later. We did do it first. And we knew we wanted to do that like super early. So it was like, it's tough. But I like those Beef guys. Don't start beef with Beef guys. Please don't do that. Steven, you can kick my ass. Like that.
I mean, listen, it worked out really well for them when
Oh,
it
yeah.
comes to those little trophy things that come out later this year. But I do want to talk about that truth serum scene because it is, you spend a lot of this show, I felt like, it was almost like I was in my group chat and just like wanting to talk to my friend about like the issues with her relationship, and if she would just talk to her boyfriend, in this case her husband, things would get better. And this is exactly that moment where, most spy shows are about concealing your secret identity, and in this case, they have been doing that the whole time, but it's really like...
Well, everybody does.
Yeah.
Like everybody is like, I feel like everybody, yeah, it's a metaphor for a relationship, but I'm like, yeah, we all are spies in that sense, where it's like, you're not completely, the whole point of getting married or having that person is that like, you don't have to wear this mask all the time. Like, it's really nice to have, when we were working on Atlanta, like we had very different ideas of relationships, and then the pandemic happened and we all hooked up and got married and like so it kind of changed a lot, I think, the way we were thinking about Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and a lot of it is like, yeah, like it's the only place you can be actually vulnerable. The reason that they need to be able to talk to each other is like, yeah, like it might hurt if this person is like, I don't want to do this anymore because I just found out something about you I don't like. But that's when you're married, that's cookies, you can't leave that easy, can you? Like, that's why it's kind of nice. So I feel like that, and this is set up in a different way where it's like, yeah, they kill you if you try and leave. So there is this deepness of like, I can be vulnerable enough with you, and that's hard. I mean, like that's a normal human thing. I think everybody goes through.
And I feel like you guys planted it like throughout the season in moments, like even in the third episode, you know, that's the first time we see Jane become vulnerable in a way that's like she's just used to running away at that point, and when he sees her be insecure or jealous, and he's still there, and when he sees her fart, he's still there. Like all those things are because you need some of that in order to have some relationship. So they reveal little things, but it's not really till that end that you get like all the shit that they think is horrible about themselves.
Yeah, I hope it like open. I feel like a lot of people don't know that anymore almost. I think it's just hard to get to, like, because I feel like me and my wife, I've known her way before we got married. It just took a long time before it was like, we're cool, right? Like, this isn't gonna change at all, right? It's like, and that's the thing, it's like, intimacy can be sexy. The idea of like long-lasting stuff it's just hard to show it because it takes time. You know, like all the like a rom-com, you can do it in an hour.
That's why a show works.
The show works for this. So like, yeah, it took 8 episodes to be like, okay, we're cool. We're cool. You know, it's nice.
Well, that is a really good point because it's a lot easier to just bail when, again, you're not threatened by death when things go wrong in a relationship. But this is also, in that same way, like a different take on arranged marriage as well. That idea of these people are two people who've been put together for a reason. I mean, this is, again, taking like Married at First Sight to a new level, too. But it's two people who are put together for a reason. They don't really know what that reason is. And that scene is them kind of finally really exploring all those things. What was that like for you as performers? I know you kind of already alluded to like that catharsis and that freedom. You know, what were some of those things that you were just so dying to get off your chest, but also to do it in that, you know, funny way as well?
Well, I feel like when we were actually filming that scene, it was like right before we started rehearsal, or we had started rehearsing it, and then someone on set, I won't say who, but was like, I have COVID, and then we all and then left, and we had to keep going or something. I don't remember. I shouldn't talk about that.
No, I'm trying to remember the exact scene.
But then we were like, okay, we just gotta get through. He didn't expose anyone. He was wearing a mask. It was fine. He left, and then so we were like, okay, all right. So
wait,
now we gotta
what
get
scene
in
are we
this
talking
thing.
about? I want to make sure.
The truth serum.
The truth
Oh, the
serum.
truth serum.
Yes.
But we were like,
I'm trying
we
to
had just
remember.
done so much fighting, like it was so much physical
Oh, yeah.
fighting, and we had given a day for this scene because it was like what 12, 15.
I had a lot of trouble remembering that. I was directing
He was
it, so I was like
directing.
very
That was
tired.
hard.
I was like getting flipped by Maya, and then be like, "Let's look at the dailies." Like, it was very
That was
hard for me to
tough.
remember
You
what
did
was going
amazing.
on. So
That's why it almost
now I remember
worked.
that scene. Yeah, the truth. It was very.
But we kept just thinking of like for me, I had to think of. I mean, I really am just saying the worst stuff on this panel tonight, but I had to think about a time I did, you know, a drug that would elicit something because I want, to me, I'm like, well, I don't know what truth serum would feel like. I imagine it would have a euphoric effect that makes you feel like like ecstasy or MDMA that makes you want to, not that I've done it, but you know, it makes you want to, like what makes you excited to share something, and also that like it takes you through a wave of emotions. So that was fun to play with because I think we did like so many takes where we did it in so many different ways.
I've done it. And I feel like the point of it is, no, I mean like, yeah, I mean like, if you're like, I feel like if you're over 30, you kind of should be doing ecstasy once a year with your significant other.
Or therapy.
Am I gonna get in trouble for
Listen, in controlled
saying people should do
environments.
that? I don't know. I don't know anybody who's been in a relationship longer than 5 years and doesn't do that once. Like it's just even to experiment, and then it ends up being like, because it just ends up being like, yeah, this is kind of therapy. You know, like we can like say finally what we can want. I mean, like what we
It was
need.
the ultimate therapy scene, though. Like
Yeah,
it
it was
was
just
like
therapy.
that's what was the right therapy scene. You had the therapy episode, and that wasn't really getting at it for them. But
Because we were trying to kind of hurt each other.
exactly.
Like, and this one, we were both too vulnerable to want to do that. And I think that's what kind of made that scene fun to me. Yay for a relationship.
I don't know. I mean, yes, this is an arduous journey over these 8 episodes, but I don't know. I did still come out of it being like, relationships are worth it. Like, they're a lot of hard work, but
They're sexy.
Yeah.
I like relationships. And I think they're way sexier than the other thing we've seen so much of. And I feel like there's you can hook up with anybody. Like that's what's crazy. I mean, like when I was in from 11th grade, 12th grade, like beginning of high school, beginning of college, the idea of just being on your phone and being like, oh, let me just that was such a crazy idea. And now, you know, years later, now it's like, yeah, you can, if you want to hook up with somebody and you just need a picture, be like, oh, let me hit him up. That's insane. So it's just, and I never got to experience that. So I only know really this. I know, like,
Yeah,
it's not great. Sounds great.
Someone's talked about this before,
But I also know the other, but I guess like from the other side, I'm like, the other side's great too. It's like, it's hard, but like, yeah, like the honesty, there's no, everything on the internet is like, you can't be vulnerable on the internet. So I feel like the honesty and vulnerability that you can have in a relationship is sexy now, especially by comparison. And I feel like there's a way to show that in long form, which I think we really wanted to do. Like Fran talked about that a lot.
Yeah.
That's part of what sold me. Oh, and it's off.
I turned it off. That's part of what sold me to be a part of the. I mean, it was also just them, but you had said that in one of the first meetings. You were like, "This is like I want to celebrate marriage. Life is hard. It's nice to go home to someone and be able to share the hard life with. Like it's really, you know, it's like a book. You want to keep reading the next chapter. It's way more interesting than starting something new. Like there's just so much, yeah. I love.
But it's just hard to show because like it's maintenance and it's stability. But I feel like if they're spies, things blow up.
Right.
So it's
a
way
good-
more fun.
Well, let's talk about that concept of the spy sandwich. I've heard about this a little bit. This
Yeah.
idea of, things blow up kind of in the middle of all of this real exploration of vulnerability. How did you all work to kind of, as you were just saying, when you have these moments with this long cat and mouse chase, but there is also like these real human moments that they're having as they're, running through the park. You're seeing the various, we now have to team up together because all these people are now attacking my husband or wife, and I'm supposed to kill them. Those moments as well.
I mean, yeah, like with the spy sandwich idea, I think like Fran like coined that was like the idea of, like spy. I don't know what part's the bread. Is the spy the bread or is the regular the bread?
The middle is spy.
Okay, the middle is spy. Okay, so the bread is like regular life. So like the idea of the relationship and then the spy and then the relationship is that you just kind of have to sandwich it in this thing where like there's something that is more important than the relationship in the middle, but on both sides you have like human jealousy or just the way of it's kind of like when you go to a party with your like husband or wife and it's like, yeah, like I don't like the way you talked about that thing at there, but we're supposed to kill them in an hour. So,
Right.
Like that's kind of stuff
like
is
the
like,
phone tracking one.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example.
Yeah.
What is it? Where it's like she wants him to follow each other, which is like a normal thing that comes up in relationships, like share your location with me and I'll share it with you. And that's like a next step. But for this, it's also important because if you share your location, then I can save you when you're done.
when you're dying. And I felt like that once we figured that out, it became it opened up a huge world for us where we're like, oh, that's all this is. It's like people want that. Just even the fart thing is like, I think that was the moment where we're like, oh, that's the show. Like the fart thing, because it was like, yeah, you fart and now you might be like, you ignore it. But the stakes are so high, so it's like someone's trying to get in. And it was just a fart. And I was like, oh, that's way more fun. And like once we figured that out, we couldn't stop. Yeah, we were just dying. We didn't get through that scene
Because it
very
felt
well.
so, like, because you have to play it so seriously, of like, you know, getting your gun and you know what you just did.
That's how we knew Maya was gonna be. Like I was like, oh, Maya's gonna be like, she definitely was always gonna be Jane, because she was like, can I be the fart one? Like when we like, she really wanted to do it. I was like, oh, that's awesome. So you like,
Well, then it sounds so crass every time we talk about it, but it's true. It's just like you want to see that side of someone, because we all go through it in relationships, right?
Everybody in here is like,
no.
I never fart.
The moment it's not even, it's the metaphor of the fart. It's like not, it's just anything that you think is embarrassing about yourself that then the other person is like, I love you, I don't care, it's okay, you know.
Yeah.
Stay.
We've kind of talked about it and danced around it, so I will go back a moment, because what you all did with this series is each one of these episodes really takes us on that journey of, you know, the first date, the second date. The episode we're talking about is that first vacation, that moment where like you still want everything to be sexy, but you're now sharing very cramped quarters, and in this case, a mission in the snowiest place possible. But that was kind of the journey that we go on with John and Jane. Tell me a little bit about, you know, even those early conversations as they're, you know, we're having their first meeting, and what you're trying to figure out of, you know, how much you want to tease that they're kind of, you know, interested in each other, kind of checking each other out, trying to also sizing each other up as spies.
You mean in the pilot?
Yeah, in the
like
pilot
yeah. No. I mean, that was the first.
We didn't really know each other.
We didn't. So it was nice because we actually filmed in order.
Didn't have to act.
We didn't. It was a lot. The chemistry was still just us getting to know each other. And I think we spent a whole day on that scene, which was really luxurious and nice. And he was having a sinus infection at the same time.
I had like an emergency surgery like that next day.
He was actually dying, yeah.
Yeah, it felt really... yeah, you can kind of hear it when you see it.
Well, we reshot it too later.
But I can tell the scenes. I can tell,
You can tell
like,
the
oh
takes.
yeah, my eyes falling out of my head. But
You
yeah,
did
we
amazing.
But we didn't know each other very well, which
Not
really
that
helped
well
us.
still, but I think what was interesting was what we weren't because it was the beginning. We were still figuring out what kind of dynamic these two were gonna have. Like you wanted to still have chemistry. You still wanted to be like, oh, there might be something there, but you couldn't reveal too much that you're like, well, it's all there now. So there was so much fine tuning. I feel like on
Hiro
the day.
Murai did like a really good job of like he's you know, he's a very subtle filmmaker. So like I remember we would do the scene and he'd be like, try this. Like he was really fine tuned with like how to play it. Like he's like, play it this time like, you know, you're the cool guy and you think like you know everything. And then he'd be like, okay, play it this time like a little bit like you don't want to give away. And you know, it's like a first date thing, which I really thought he did a really great job pushing us in a position where we're acting like, yeah, it's a first awkward. It felt like when I first saw the cut, I was like, oh, this feels like we got put up on a date by our best friends and we don't really know each other. But she loves tacos, you love tacos, so like kind of thing. And it feels good in that way, which I think is kind of quaint in an old school way. People don't really meet like that anymore.
And then it just kind of builds from there. We get a chance to see, as we mentioned earlier, the therapy sessions when, you know, things have gotten hot and heavy and are going great, and then it, you know, burns hot and bright, and then sometimes things start to fall apart. But I love the real just exploration of what that looks like, and all of the different ways that, as you were mentioning earlier, in a therapy session like that, you're trying to needle each other and hurt each other. That episode also has the greatest subtitle ever in the Naked and Afraid element as well. That idea that you guys also then go out into the wilderness and have to really be honest about the way that you feel about some of his behaviors and that macho man tendency out there in the woods. Tell me about, so we've talked about kind of that high, that first meeting. get into the lows, and then we'll go into the low lows of this episode.
Well, of like the one where in the woods.
Sure, but yeah, let's
I
talk
feel like
about that.
I feel like the woods one. That one was like, it took a. That one was tough. We were like
That
kind of
was
in the
tough.
middle of like nowhere for a long time, and it was I don't know, like we really bonded because it was kind of like a trauma bond.
It was cold and it was
We
at
were really
night.
cold. We were like
Well,
at night. We were in the middle of nowhere.
In the middle of nowhere, but it was raining a lot on the night we were supposed to shoot this big fight scene. And the fight scene was, again, like it was 15 pages. And I think
Yeah,
we
fun.
all went into the trailer waiting and kind of were discussing the fight. Fran, the director, Amy Simons, and us, and we just sort of like reconfigured the scene in a way that felt like it
Yeah.
could flow. Because I mean, arguments are really hard, I think, to film, like to show real fights, because they can be circular, they can not make sense, they can just they're just hard to show in I think film and
you want
TV.
to fine tune them.
Yeah.
Like you watch like Social Network. I was like, like that first scene in Social Network where
Oh
they're
my
going back and
gosh,
forth,
yeah.
and it's like really what you need is like a full day, maybe two, in that spot, so that like the editors have enough to fine tune and be like, this is now not only is this the tone, but this is the pattern of just like, because the way they talk is like very,
Well,
it's
that's-
very
yeah.
so enjoyable, and like, and that's all like kind of music. We're out. It's maybe 58 degrees, like we're covered in tick spray. It's like really cold, and I just remember
4 in the
like
morning.
4 in the morning, and it's like we don't have the luxury of like just doing this again. So like it's like we have to do it. So we were like, a lot of it was like, we'd rush over to Fran, we'd like, oh, we can get rid of that, and then Amy would be like, yeah, we don't need this, and maybe just, and we would and like I don't know, that's really. Our editors did an amazing job on that too, because we
Good.
didn't give them as much as I would have liked to give them, just because of what it was. But it was like an editing.
I loved filming that scene.
Yeah.
That was, it felt like such a challenge to get there, but then once we were filming it, it did feel kind of magical. Like it was like it stopped raining, it was
Yeah.
nighttime, and it was like, so, I mean, it's hard because we were so close by that point and got along so well, and you don't want to fight with Donald. Like Donald
I was about to
is,
say, I'm also an excellent arguer.
he's,
I
so,
love to
Was that
fight.
line true from the pilot that you can't lose an argument?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
me.
Oh, okay.
yeah.
That's really me. I mean, like, well, it's I can lose. I know I'm married, so I can definitely lose. So like, I feel like
You're not wrong.
I'm
is
not
actually
wrong.
the line.
Yeah, I'll go to bed wrong, but right in my head. But I don't have to say I'm right. Like, that's really what it is now. But I feel like I feel like there's a fight scene. That fight scene, I was like, oh, let me just like really react if this was like a horrible fight that everybody I feel like has. And I really felt like that was like, I love that scene. I was like, this is the best fight scene I've ever seen until I saw Anatomy of the Fall. And then I was like, oh, great.
That was
We're
great.
never gonna win. That fight is also top tier. It's a top tier fight. But like, yeah, pretty much.
You were saying before I interrupted you. You
Oh,
were
I don't even know. I mean, no, you said it all. I mean, it was just having him opposite me, just fighting with him. It was so it was devastating in moments because it was so we did hit below the belt so much, and I felt like that kind of an argument is an argument that you can't always come back from. So it felt like a big breakup for them. So I felt really devastated by it, actually.
Well, tell me then about fine-tuning this fight, because this is essentially an episode that is one gigantic fight, as we've mentioned, one gigantic miscommunication that begins with a very tragic incident at the very beginning with Max. And leads to the potential. I mean, listen, if someone killed my cat and someone tried to blow up my mom, I would definitely be willing to scrap. So, tell me a little bit about the things that this was asking of you all, both emotionally and physically, because it's, also this, as you mentioned, running through the city, also fighting each other, not just those kind of emotional barbs as well?
I mean, that episode, it was, I think, that last episode was like the most fun.
Yeah.
Because it was almost like we had to have restraint the rest of the episodes. Like, we couldn't blow everything up, and it was like, okay, we always knew there was gonna be one moment where we like really put all the budget and all the explosion and all the everything. And this one, it was like all bets are off. Like once the cat dies, I feel like people are like, I wanna see blood. Like, fuck whoever killed that cat. So
Turns
like
into
I
John
felt
Wick.
yeah, it was a good moment to use. And I was very happy about getting to direct that, because I just felt like
so great.
Yeah, I felt like it was a good time to be like, okay, we can do all the things I really wanted to do, and we knew each other really well by that point, and we got to wear like the matching like spy versus spy like stuff. I was like, all of that stuff kind of fell into place. So I was feeling like this is what everybody was kind of asking for, and we just kind of like just brought it home. It was just like, just land the plane well enough, because we want to fight.
I love the way I had the plan for how the fight would go, that like it isn't just, always in movies you see people fight and they fight perfectly for hours. It's like, well, aren't you tired now? Like there's no sweat, there's no anything. And so I loved that in this version you see them get progressively more and more tired, and they have less energy, and there's still so much anger that they are still going for it. And he's, especially Jane, and yeah, it was just a great.
It was a great scene to like shoot. Also, like took forever though.
I was sick, and
yeah, it was like tough. I just remember I just was slamming on the back of like my back, and then like getting up and looking at it, being like, that's not right. Gotta do it again. I gotta think, I felt like it felt you needed that in order to buy the truth serum scene. And then it felt good at the end when you see the other two Smiths, and you're like, oh, all this stuff is kind of falling into place, and like all that kind of stuff. And you needed the very end. We really always
earned the ending.
Yeah, you earned the ending, and then you like the names. I was like, that's like our love you. Like I really see you.
Yeah.
Like I really see you, and like you can be really vulnerable now that we know each other. And I like the old you too, which is I think those last words of like, I like Jane, like, it's cool.
I mean, listen, that whole idea of, we already knew, or at least we knew that they realized they didn't really like those other two Smiths after what went down in the previous episode. It was some nice validation to all get a chance to say, we really hate those two. We love Parker Posey and Wagner, but we really hate those two. Speaking of that idea of the physicality of this, like you said, Donald, how many times did you make that flip? How exhausting really was shooting this episid?
I mean, the whole show was pretty exhausting. It was I got into, I started like getting physically ready for it, I guess, way early. Like while I was still shooting Atlanta, I was like starting to, because I was like, I know I'm gonna have to do this, at least I was like in my head, I was like, oh, we're gonna do this kind of thing. So like we were finishing that, and it was just, I feel like if I wasn't in physical shape, it would have taken even a mental toll, because it's just like a lot of it is, even like the gunplay and stuff like that, you just have to be aware of like kind of certain things. So like, yeah, it was very physically taxing, but like, I don't know, like it's good. It came out well, I think. And also, I was just thinking about like the gun sounds, like they're so loud on set, like kind of thing. Like in America, like they're like we were using like quarter and half loads. And then we went over to Europe and it's like airsoft, and it was like way. You shoot them into the ground like all the time.
Don't
like
make me sound crazy. It was only because
like,
I was
be
so
scared, and then she'd shoot them into the ground.
I say, can I shoot it on your foot? And then no one was scared. Because in America, I'm terrified of guns, and terrified of the quarter and half loads, and I was scared that I wouldn't be able to shoot the gun believably without like going like that every time I shot it. But we got there.
We got there. It looked good.
It looked fantastic. What was your physical prep like, Maya, for all that running?
Well, I had just had a baby.
Just had a baby.
When they approached me. So my body was a wreck. It was my first baby.
She was really in for it. I mean, like, she really, I was like, are you sure? Because we're really gonna be running. She was like, yeah. She's like, really was down.
Well, it's nice to have a reason to get in shape, like a motivation for, okay, it's just to play this character, so I'll do it. But I cried a lot at the gym when I first started, because I was like, oh, this isn't me. And I had to like become this other person, like I really did, because I just am not, I'm not a gym rat. And neither is Jane, but like she, you know, there's so much strength to her, playing her, so I think I got really strong. I'm not a runner, so in the beginning, you'll notice in the pilot, like I am lifting my arms really high, and that's the Tom Cruise run, which does actually make a difference. It does make you look like you're running faster, but by the 8th episode, I was running fast.
Yeah. You got really fast.
We got fast there,
I was
yeah.
super impressed.
Yeah.
I mean, that is also the evolution. Like, that's what y'all have been saying. That's what you get when you have 8 episodes. You get a chance to, like, literally see a character physically change.
Well, that's the other part that drew me to this too, is just how great that these spies start off as like these fumbly, awkward humans and bad spies. Like they're not great spies at first, and that's so fun to see them evolve and get better. So as they get stronger as people and as spies, they fall more in love. Like there's just so much evolution in it, which is so nice to see.
Speaking of fall more in love, there is another reference to therapy that comes in this episode, and that comes courtesy of one of your mothers that played a role here. What was it like, Donald, to direct your mom?
My mother was in the show?
Yeah, I think I may have seen somebody.
No, that was, I got talked into that, because it's like, well, a friend of mine cast of the show, Carmen Cuba, who's like incredible. She was like, she knows my mom. She was like, your mom has to like do this role. And I remember thinking, I was like, what? Like my mom doesn't act at all. Like I don't know, this is a good idea. So I talked to Maya about it because she had worked with her mom on Pen 15. And her mom's amazing, and I thought she did a really great job on Pen 15. She was like, I think she'll do great. It's just you're gonna turn back into like your teenage self. And I was like, I don't think that's gonna happen. Like we're very far away from that. But of course, like first of all, like I just gave her the script, and she just showed up and she knew. I was just so impressed with how she just.
I can't believe you didn't audition her. That's
No, I
wild
didn't.
to me. I had to audition my mom like many times.
I just see my mom as she is kind of an
so
actor.
good. She was amazing.
Like my mom's I feel like lovers are storytellers. Like we just like to tell long. My mom can tell a story. So like I was like, if she can tell a story, I felt like, oh, she can do this. But I also didn't take into account the idea of like memorizing and then
And
hitting
also a bunch
mark.
of people staring at you. Like
Yeah.
it's a very
She
different
literally,
thing to go
I got
on
scared.
set.
I definitely got scared because when she came on, she was like, a lot of people. I was like, uh-oh. I was like, oh shit, like I forgot. You know, but she killed it. She was doing, she did it so well. But then there was a point where she's supposed to be talking about your nails or something like that. She's supposed to be like, oh, I can tell by your nails that you're not really like a son. And then she kept being so like, I don't want to say that.
It's too mean.
She's like, it's too mean. I was like, Mom, you say mean shit all the time to me. Like, come on. Just say it like you would say to me. She was like, I don't
They
say
don't ever
mean
do
things
that.
to you. They never want to do the mean stuff. But she did a great job. Like, I was really floored by that. I hope she gets nominated just so, I mean, like, I really do. So she
It's
gets.
gonna change her.
She's
Just watch out.
gonna stop returning my texts.
Maya, I want to ask you about the other half of that scene, the other side of it, because it is very much a big part of what leads us into the truth serum and kind of opens that door to her maybe even considering to continue to open up to this guy. You know, what was it like to kind of have this moment where Jane is being confronted by, you know, a family member? She's now lost her only family in Max. Then we know we're about to find out, you know, the deal with her parents and why things are not great with her dad. But what was it that you were experiencing, tapping into? What do you remember about that scene?
I mean, I remember struggling with it actually at first, just because in my mind I was like, wait, I'm running from, like, isn't he gonna come in at any moment? Shouldn't I be like, we're just sitting down? I'm gonna sit down and have tea. So it was sort of like getting into that mindset, and they talked me through it to make sense, but it ended up like sort of what you're saying of it. I was so focused on just like the reality of like running and wanting to like make sure that I protect myself, that I wasn't realizing this like gift that I'm getting from his mother, and then for it to like the meta of it being his real mother talking to me about, you know, what I imagined to be really Donald, you know?
That story's real.
Exactly.
That story in there is real.
It felt like this gift that you, and it felt like for the first time Jane was able to sort of like have a peek into a potential future of like having a mother-in-law even, which can go both ways, but it felt like this like very warm, nurturing moment that she hasn't had, you know? And so I feel like to have that right as you're about to kill their son, it was so many things at once. So I don't know, I had it all jumbled in my head all at once.
That was a heavy acting load for you, like, because you did bring up that point, which I was like, that's a good point, but I think I need you to act your way out of it. I was like, because it's not gonna be the story. It has to. We need this moment, and you really did. You know, you killed us. So I appreciate that as a director. I really did.
All right, well that brings us to the end, because as you were mentioning, Donald, it is that moment where they're waiting out those last few moments. You've kind of recognized that they would love each other no matter what. They're in this together, ride or die, potentially quite literally. And all we see are those 3 muzzle flashes, those silenced gunshots. Everybody's been dying to know what happens next, but I feel like there's probably people in this audience who might. Francesca, you've been a big part of this conversation. I'm curious, what do you know? What is your take on this whole situation?
Donald and Maya, are you guys dead?
Are we dead?
Are you guys dead? Are you coming?
You know what? That's such a good question, and also this is the right time to answer that. Finally, I know a lot of
We're
people.
gonna spill it
I'm
tonight.
bullshitting. I'm not gonna answer that. I feel bad because you were like, "Yeah, do it." I'm like, "No." We worked really hard on that ending. Like I was like, I feel like I feel like that is the sign that the ending was good. So many people are like, so every time I get stopped on the street, which is, it's crazy being on Amazon and having like people from everywhere like have seen you a little bit. So it's a lot of people who usually like Atlanta. You should get that. Sounds important. But it's like I feel like Atlanta and Korea, all these things were like kind of niche. This is the first time it was like a big swath of people, and everybody asks us that, and I just feel like, yeah, we worked really hard on making people not know because it's important. It's a good story. Like I want it to be a good story, and I feel like we're kind of like, if we told you exactly what was happening, whether we're there or not, like it would just ruin it. It actually feels exactly like when This Is America was at. People were like, what does it mean? I was like, you really want me to just ruin this shit for you? You really want me to ruin this shit for you? Like, it just, we don't gotta ruin it. Like, just watch season 2. Hopefully, like, I hope so. I sound like an old angry man. Like, just watch season 2. Turn that phone off. Like,
It'd be fun if it was an event. Like, when we would watch Sopranos, it was every Sunday, and I know it's different with streaming, and you drop it all, but like, this will be an event. That will be exciting to find out, I hope, what happens.
I mean, listen, Sopranos is a great callback there because we still don't even know what happened to them.
Exactly. And that's the best ending of all time
It's
to me.
great.
Anyway, I really like that
Yeah,
ending.
I did too. A lot of people didn't.
Yeah.
Because they want to know.
Because they want to know that I get it. It's sometimes, that's not life. That I feel like the point of the whole show is like a little bit of reminding people like, this is what life is. It's the in-between. You're gonna have like big moments. And I found that with like being married. I'm like, yeah, you have big scary moments. Like your kid is sick, or like this person finds a lump, or this person, like all of that kind of stuff. You have those big moments, and you kind of treasure the moments where you don't know and everything. Like because when my dad passed like in around 2018, I started to think a lot about like family and like what were my favorite moments with him. And I was like, honestly, there were moments when I was like in the next room reading or doing something, and I knew he was in the next room just like watching football or something, and I was like, those are my favorite moments. The moments where I'm like, I don't know what he's doing, I just know he's safe. and like I know we're both happy together.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that's what we're trying to do with this show a little bit, is kind of remind people, you know, not that I'm like shitting on TikTok and all this stuff. I like all that kind of stuff, but there is another side to life that we are forgetting. And as a millennial, I remember a lot of that shit. And I feel like kids don't, and they feel like if they're not online, they don't exist. And you do exist. And like all those people you looked up to, whether it be like Nina Simone or like whoever, all these big name people, they had real lives that were not filmed. And you'll never know what they were. They had big moments that no one saw but them, and they lived their lives just for them. So I think part of this show is trying to remind people that like it's for you, you know, like it's not for anybody else. Now I really sound like an old man. But, yeah.
Well, even if we, as we said, we've got to wait until season 2 comes out, but for now we can just imagine that they're back in Italy rebuilding that cottage, because they've now torn down multiple houses of lies, but we're gonna have a new one. We're gonna have a fresh start, and yeah, we'll see you guys back for season 2 or not. I don't know. But thank you guys for joining us. It's all